Thank you, everyone. Welcome to our third seminar. The first one was on accounting, and the second one was on labor law. And today we're going to talk about renting an office in Japan. And today we have Corey. It's you can see his wonderful face later because he has video showing. But yeah, if you could give a quick introduction to Jumpstart Abroad, Corey.
Hey, how's everybody? My name's Corey Nedz, originally from the States. I've been in Tokyo about 8 years now. I've worked in the real estate industry for about a little bit over 5 years. Jumpstart Abroad was originally created as a semi-relocation company, kind of get expats assorted and set up in Japan through kind of all those like tribulations that you're going to get through when you first get here. However, over time, my wife has been an expert in real estate over 10 years, and just kind of putting those two together, we figured we'd be able to create a great brokerage to assist expats in real estate over time. And gotta say, it's been a really fun journey. We've done probably over 400 brokerage contracts and rentals, including offices and house purchases, and probably over about 50 to 100 investment projects.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, and
Oh,
for
happy to be
myself,
here.
uh, let's say I founded a company called Scaling Your Company, but before this, I co-founded a company called One Coin English and Japan Switch. If you've seen Facebook ads that are mildly funny but mildly insulting your Japanese language skills, that's probably us at Japan Switch. And but yeah, OneCoin, I think it's one of the top 10 largest English schools for adults in Japan. And I currently advise around, I think, 28 or 29 entrepreneurs on how to scale sales, marketing, recruitment, and operations. I was also a resident mentor for 500 Global, which is one of the top startup accelerators in the world, which has helped companies like Reddit, Canva, Intercom, I think GitHub, and 15 to 20 other billion-dollar companies. Also, we do provide a lot of content on our website at scalingyourcompany.com. And Pete, you could put the links in the chat for the Scaling Japan podcasts. Also, we have a investor list in Japan, free seminars like this one, and we have very thorough articles like Guide to Tax Accountants in Japan. And Pete will be posting the links. All this information is free to help you scale your business in Japan. Cool. So
Man, I
yeah,
really hope people don't overlook that as well. The help and assistance of starting your company here, and also the guidance while you're doing business in Japan, because a lot of people will come with the mindset of what we've dealt with in the US. I can speak on behalf of even real estate. Almost none of that pertains to the business here, even looking at flipping models or customer acquisition and stuff like that. So really having an expert in the industry here and just even the advice they can provide, it really helps. So I really hope people don't overlook that service.
and basically every podcast episode is doing something in Japan.
I really hope people take a look at it because it'll really help. Even if you live in Japan and you've been here enough and you think you know the business, it does not hurt to listen from someone else who's done it.
Thank you very much. So yeah, today we'll jump into renting an office in Japan. And just to give a quick outline to everyone, I think we'll go about 45 to 60 minutes. And when I was thinking about this topic, trying to think of like how could we help the most people, I think the big three would be rent. First, I guess, first off, renting an office. The second one is kind of moving out of an office. You know, you would want to change places. And the third one, which I think would be interesting to explore, is renegotiating terms.
Yeah.
And there's definitely no information on that on the internet. So
it's because it's almost non-existent, but we'll get there. It's just not really understanding the industry. Now, myself personally, I'll admit I'm not the number one office expert. That's not my main forte. However, along my journey of brokerages, I've personally done it 3 to 4 times myself through business, from the standard apartment all the way up to having a storefront to private offices now. And I've also helped about 10, 15 different companies as well that were startups on getting office set up. So I at least have enough information and support to be able to give you what you need to have a successful chance of getting a great office.
Yeah. And I know, let's say customer service has been part of your success story. So that's kind of why I chose you as the guy to go to. Then at
Oh,
the end, I think we definitely will have a lot of Q&A time as well if you have specific questions. Cool. So I think we'll jump into it. So moving into your building, or some people's cases, getting their first office. But Corey, off to you.
well, when we're talking about costs, right? So the costs, and before we even get into initial costs and stuff like that, it's really important to understand your own type of business that you're going to be running and what kind of office you're going to end up needing. That'll end up determining kind of your rent budget, right? What can your company afford? How large does it need? The capability of how many people are living into it. It's really going to make the biggest difference. So I'd say first coming up with your initial budget is the most important key to your success. Know what your company can afford going monthly, especially for startups. Know what your capital is going in. And then also, what's the most necessary office you need? Not every company needs a storefront. Not every type of company needs a really large office. A lot of people can start out with a simple apartment if it's able to register something we'll call SOHO, SOHO. A lot of companies start out there, right? Those are going to be cheaper to rent. It's really for a solo man, someone who's going to start the company himself, one or two people in it. You're not really inviting a lot of clientele. You'll see a lot of people that do a lot of trade, import and export, look into something like that because they don't really need a fancy office or a large space. So you're looking at cheap rent. In those cases, the initial costs are pretty similar to an apartment. You're really looking at your standard, maybe a month deposit. We're going to get into these key fees and stuff like that in a second, but you're really going to want to know what your company needs for an office and what's its rules and regulations. So I can tell on my perspective of a real estate company, we have specific rules to getting an office. For example, I could use a personal home, or I could technically use a SOHO office. However, I have certain rules we have to have. So for example, my client cannot enter the door and reach a public space before it reaches my office, meaning it couldn't hit a kitchen, it couldn't hit a dining, it couldn't hit a living, anywhere where it's a regular public space. So thus a small apartment could work. That's where it's just directly in a one space room. Now, if you were a school, you're going to have completely different rules. The reason I want to explain that is because that's going to determine the type of office you're going to have to get for your company licensing. And then that also comes with costs. You'll see a lot of different companies have a lot much higher costs than others. Also, figuring out what kind of office you need will also determine what kind of buildings you can get into. So you'll find out for real estate companies, for example, generally we can't enter the same building that there's another real estate company in. It just happens to be part of the trade. And most management companies won't allow a double rent. Similar to schools, they're not allowed in a lot of buildings. And it's not that they're not allowed legally, it's just that most owners don't want it. So really kind of getting down into the specifics of your type of property and figuring out your limitations there is where you want to start.
And I think I've experienced that too, where at least in the school case, we had too much foot traffic. Yep. And that was the reason given for us.
Well, because they'll usually ask you if it's going to be used for customer entrances and how many people you'll average in there per day. Because they also consider noise levels, right? You could have a school, but what if you have, a private business above that's very quiet that doesn't want to listen to it? So the owner in that sake will to try and reduce other companies and people leaving their office. They're going to reduce certain type of companies like food or schools or things that will bring a lot of people in.
And I'll probably add one more point. And if you are kind of like a school or you are a little bit noisy, I would probably tell them in advance, because I've seen cases where the neighbors they'll get into arguments with their neighbors over noise.
Oh, yeah. Well, nowadays, actually, a lot of people don't really share this, but on the real estate end of the business, we have a really good kind of professional system. It's not black and white, but when we go to call and inquire at an office, so say you're my client and you want to start a school, and you'll tell me maybe it's like 15, 20 people. Usually we pre-discuss these things. So one, you don't run into those issues in the future. Two, you don't have to go through this long process to find out, oh, no, we don't accept schools. So these things should really be kind of pre-negotiated with your agent. That's really important, is be really upfront with your agent and transparent about it. So that way they kind of save you a lot of time, save you potential money, and kind of get you out of having issues in the future. It's a really big one. Now, if I could get into cost, now cost is going to vary widely. I won't get into rents because rent's going to be really determined on size, location, and location. I'm going to put location twice because, for example, a 50 square meter office in Minatoku that's going for, 10 to 15 grand a month is going to be 100 times different than Kanagawa Kawasaki, where you could get it for a quarter of the price. But in terms of initial costs, it's pretty similar to most locations. I'll go down to the bare minimum in cost and then extend from there. Your bare minimums that you know right up front is, let's say 70% of the time, you're going to have what we call gift money, key money, or reikin in Japanese. Sadly, it's in most rentals, and especially in offices, you're going to find that charge. Next one, I'll skip over deposits for now because that's a bigger talk. Next one's going to be your agency. Be prepared when you're working with your brokerage, especially offices. Offices are pretty exclusive and usually do not pay out what we'll call an introduction fee. Thus, agencies don't get paid for being a brokerage. The only payment they get is from their own clients. Next is going to be, depending on the size of your company, what we call a guarantor company. Now, it's not fully exclusive to Japan, but Japan's pretty exclusive in this area. Guarantor companies are pretty much your rent collectors, and they guarantee their rent to the owners. This is going to be between 50% to 100% of a month's rent. So 50% is kind of your more average. You'll find that the same as regular apartment rentals, same with offices. However, if you are a large enough company and you have enough capital, this is one negotiation point here. You can kind of negotiate off the guarantor if your company is large enough and has enough capital. Now, is there a bare minimum or set number? Sadly, there's not. It's really just company by company. They'll assess your company total and information and try and waive that off for you. Afterwards, you're going to have your standard fire insurance. And then the biggest and most important one is going to be deposits. Deposits are large variables when it comes to offices. These can go from 1 month to 10 months to, I've seen, up to 2 years, depending on what kind of office you have and what you potentially are doing to that office. Larger deposits are usually found in restaurants or completely skeletoned buildings. So not just a single room being a skeleton, which means it's been stripped down to the walls to where you can customize it from zero, but an actual whole building that's full on skeleton, they'll take away 2 years of your time there. And so be prepared. On the bare minimal, to summarize this, you're probably looking at around 6 months upfront of cash to up to, let's just say, average about a year. I won't make the 2 year part up because that one's kind of very rare. Does that make sense? Sorry, I apologize. I rambled on that one.
Makes sense to me.
It's a tough one, but be prepared that you're going to want to have, this is going to be not just in finding your office, but I think this is pretty standard probably around the world in most parts. You should usually have a year's cash up front to prepare your office. You're going to have a lot of extra costs that are not just deposits and rent. So usually that's prepared capital.
That has been my experience as well with opening 10 locations.
It's one of those things is like, luckily you're a person that can solve these issues for most people, but most people's hit the errors, run into it. They get hit by roadblocks. They weren't prepared for it. That's why your service is so important as well. So that people don't have to run through these errors like we've done. A lot of the prior entrepreneurs, we've gone through it. We've hit it once. I wanted an amazing storefront as my first office. Guess what? Couldn't do it. You got to start out somewhere. Now, if we were to go on to the next point of negotiables, to be honest, there's not a lot of negotiables in terms of Japanese real estate. Now, there's going to be some push and pull on the rent. Usually, rent's not exactly a negotiable number. However, you can negotiate a little bit if you want to try. As prices go up, you usually see more wiggle room. Right. If your apartment's rent, let's just say you used a regular apartment that has Soho capabilities or where you could register an office, and it's only about 70,000 yen. The chances of you negotiating off $100 is not going to be too high. Maybe $10, maybe 1,000 yen they may consider. Your best negotiation tactic in most office rentals is free rent. Your goal is always to try and get initial free rent off. A lot of offices are going to need some preparations work, whether it started at a skeletal naked stage where you're going to have construction going, or even just the bare minimum of getting an office. You still got to prepare your licenses, you prepare your paperwork. To be able to get your company license, you have to prepare desks, your printer, your phone, your internet. Companies understand the preparation. Now, will they all give you free rent? I can tell you on a personal experience, no. I've just rented a new office. I love it to death. They were non-negotiable. However, I've had others that have given me up to 3 free months. Take full advantage of it, and it's always worth begging for it.
Yes, and in our case as well, in getting like I think 10 locations, that has been our experience as well. Usually the one thing that if we're able to get anything is the free rent.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes you can dock off a little bit on the rent. I found the most flexibility is docking off maybe a little bit in the rent. But that's really from the expertise of your agent. Your agent can usually kind of take a look in the real estate systems and how long has it been listed, how many companies are listing it, right? If I see 5 different companies listing the same office, that's a great sign that it hasn't been rented. So your agent can really give you the best strategy moving forward if they think there's any push or pull there. I've personally negotiated off certain amounts of deposits. When you're looking at 10 months, I'd be able to get down to maybe 6. But you're really going to try your rent in your free rent. And this one is going to be kind of out there, but I'll bring it up to people who want to start a restaurant. A lot of restaurants that have been bailed out before still have their actual refrigerators and the whole setup is still there. Usually you have to take that at a price. Let's just say it's like 4 million yen, but it'll come with the whole restaurants, all the seats, the tables, the refrigerator. It's good to go. There is some room for negotiation usually there. So if you're getting a restaurant and they're charging you premium prices for all the furnishings that are in there, definitely go after that. I've seen a good 25% taken off pretty casually there. Just because they actually usually don't own it, it's not their money. They're just capitalizing on what the last company left them. Just a heads up. Now let's check out what are the average ranges for key money and deposit. Now, average ranges and legal ranges are going to be 2 different conversations here. And Japan is a very straightforward country. However, I'll say it's a very gray country because they don't get overly too specific in certain areas. There are legalities between key money. There's legalities between agency fees. I'll start out with the easier one, an agency fee, for example. We're max 1.1 times the rent. So we're max allowed up to 1 month of rent plus tax. If you're ever getting charged more than that for an agency fee, run away real quick. That's one call to the labor board, and that'll definitely come after you. However, key money has already been a very gray area in Japan for a long time now, and it's been very well overlooked. It's never going to disappear. However, let's just say the max I've ever seen is 2 months. 1 month is already not good in terms of legalities and kind of how business should be done. But to give you a straight up answer, 2 months. 2 months is the max I've ever seen on key money. And I think I said previously as well, deposits, I'll give you an average. If it's a normal, small, simple office, you're probably looking at 1 to 2 months. I'd say a fair average is usually 6 months. However, it can go extended from there. How about the schools, Tyson? I'm not sure, but working with about a school, usually they're kind of a little bit more work to them. And I've seen those kind of have heavier deposits.
I've at least for key money, key money's been 1 to 2. For deposits, yeah, I think we've had to put 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Sounds about right. Definitely the bigger your business and the more work to the office, they'll usually charge more for. That one's going to have a lot more students. They're going to have a little bit more wear and tear on the floors, we'll call it, and things of that nature. So they'll usually come back to you heavier. But if you're just like a small guy trading stocks with a simple apartment office, be prepared for just a simple rental cost of maybe 4 to 5 months, all included. How much does the realtor take? Earlier, as I stated, the legal rules are we're allowed up to 1 month or 1 times what the rent is plus tax. We go by a 1.1 times rate. So if your place is worth 100,000 yen, with tax included, 110,000. Now, this is different when it comes to purchasing and investing. However, in terms of rentals, we're at a set limit. Now, does that mean we always get 1-to-1? Always negotiate. Are people really negotiable? You never know. However, as a businessman, you should always negotiate. Even if you're buying your car and you love it, it's the only one on the road. Still ask for $1 off. Right? Try with every agent you run into. And sometimes, now this is not the best advice, but it doesn't hurt to kind of ask around the pot as well. If you're running around with a few different agents, and at least you have 2 that have treated you really well. However, we do have fair play rules, at least terms of agencies. And we usually say the first person that have shown the renter this apartment or this office is usually the man that gets it. However, as a business owner and someone that's trying to survive as a living, save money wherever you can. That will be my best advice there. How much does construction cost? Construction is going to vary in many different areas. Depending on the type of office, again, what you'll need, figure that part out, and then decide what you need in an office. The goal is not to have construction. There are a lot of ready-made offices in Japan, carpeted, new wallpaper, kind of the bare bones. It's going to have a kitchen sink somewhere or regular hand wash the sink and a toilet. Take advantage of those if you can. If you can take a simple office, get the simple office. Now, if you were to reform, I can tell you just based on experiences. I will not give experiences into luxury. I will also not give experiences into certain areas. For example, schools. Schools are going to require more walls built up, private rooms. These kind of all make a big difference. But if you were just to have an office that had to be renewed, you need new wallpaper, new flooring, new toilet. I've done all of that usually around 800,000 to 1 million yen. If you're going to have to do construction on an apartment or an office, at a bare minimum for about 20 square meters, you should have 1 million yen. No more, no less. Now that price just goes up and up and up based on wallpaper choices, floor choices. Let's just say start out with 1 million yen and go up from there. Allow you to choose your own fees. There's not really a set number there because it's kind of hard to give you an expectancy of what you're going to be looking for. For example, I don't know what kind of sink you're going to need. I don't know what kind of entrance you need. However, on a bare minimum, look at least to 800,000 to 1 million. I've never done it for less. I'll just tell you that from my experience. How about you, Tyson?
Actually, I was taking a look at the audience, and I think I actually know a majority. I would say I know 90% of them, and actually, I think it's not physical business. I think they're actually in more of the tech and like services. But for school, yes, for schools or anything where you require a private room, there's a lot of regulations. Like, let's say you have to, every private room has to have its own air conditioning system, and let's say a fire, let's say fire detector.
No. So those are just going to price up the prices. Now, tech, this is going to be a hard one for me to speak on. I've not worked with a lot of tech companies, but tech companies also vary largely. I've worked with a few very large tech companies, Bitcoin. They're in Shibuya Scramble. There was no question of their budgeting. They did not have a care. There was not an exact budget. They just got a really nice office. I think this is really important more for the solo tech owners or small wanting to start up a company. Like I said in the beginning, definitely do your research on what you need specifically to register a company or a type of licensing that you may need. But outside of that, I really think tech's one of those ones that I think where you really have to just save the most amount of money you can. and use it in other areas. Your offices are usually quite simple.
Yeah, sometimes they get that like let's say if you do B2B sales, it's good to have a tech office in
Yeah.
either Shibuya, but we did get one good question that I think is very relevant to this.
Yeah.
But Dwayne asks, are there incentives or subsidies? He says he's asking for startups looking for their first office in Japan, but do you know if there's just incentives or subsidies in general for maybe
Now,
their
I do
first?
not have a name of one on top of my head. I cannot remember the name of the organization. I think it's something I could look up for you afterwards. I've had prior clients use, and I could get you the information. If you want to give Tyson an email afterwards, I can definitely follow up with. The government does subsidies. Right now, Tokyo and Fukuoka are the only two, I believe, in this program at the moment where they're trying to promote expat owners in Japan for various types of businesses. They offer you services from free lawyers to free accounting to creating your actual business plans. They're also giving subsidy loans to first-time expat owners in Japan that are much easier to get than actual business or investment loans. So in that category, I'll say there's most likely somewhere in those subsidies of loans or startup cash that pertain to your starting office. So the amount probably differs by the type of office you may need. I would definitely take full advantage of that. I've worked with quite a few customers that were just new to Japan and they went through that program, and it's really wonderful. Take full advantage of it. One, semi-free money, you can't beat it. Two, the support of free lawyers and accounting. It's just a dream.
And we will send this recording to the attendees. And when I do that, I would like to include that information or that answer.
No, it's definitely a good question. It is something that's asked quite a bit. I just don't remember the name of the program top of my head. They have a section for it. But yeah, as a new business owner, definitely go visit your local coup.
Cool. And yeah, we'll send that again.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, create
In
that.
terms of initial costs, if anybody has any questions at the end, please let me know. But it's pretty deterministic. And definitely, if you guys follow up in any emails with Tyson or would like to reach out, I can provide examples of what a Soho would look like, a simple apartment style, just so you can get an idea of what you're looking at.
Cool. And what are some other areas we should consider when, I guess, possibly getting our first office?
I've probably rambled on it a lot so far already, but it's definitely knowing just what kind of business you are and knowing what is required for the type of licenses you need to have. Like you said, with the school, with the private rooms, and knowing that you have to have an air conditioning and fire exits. The most important thing is understanding your business and understanding the requirements and licensing to your business. I've seen quite a few owners make these large mistakes, and they've rented out, because from America, we come to a place where you can usually register most businesses almost anywhere. There are a few rules in certain companies. However, we have a lot of home and private businesses. It's a little bit different. Where Japan, the rules are very, very strict in a lot of avenues. I've seen people rent certain types of offices and try and take advantage of cheaper prices, and they failed to get their licensing. And that was here's 3-5 months of money that just went down the drain. So be careful when you're looking at cloud offices. It's a great start. It's a good way to save money. However, you may not be able to register your license there like we can't in real estate. So number one is definitely understanding your business and the type. My second, I apologize. Please go ahead.
Go ahead.
My second biggest opinion is not just understanding your type of business, but it's really understanding what kind of office you really need, right? And how much money you really need to dish out for what you need. My biggest mistake in the beginning of real estate, I'll say, which luckily it didn't really hurt me, but I consistently thought I need to be like the Japanese real estate companies. I thought I needed a storefront. I thought I needed floor traffic. I thought I needed all these things. After 2 years of having a storefront, I found that my business model does not attract the Japanese walk-in market. And I learned that Japanese does not have much of a walk-in market. They are very internet heavy and calling ahead. They'll look up on Sumo, they'll look for a property, they'll call in what they want. They don't come by the office, you meet at the property, and they usually move forward or you don't hear from them again. That was a big mistake on my part. Luckily, it wasn't a costly one because of very cheap in and cheap exit. Over time, I learned that. So I think really understanding what your business is, what is your clientele, and what you think is necessary for your clientele. So that way you're not overspending. I know a lot of these great companies like Bitcoin and stuff like that love to be in Shibuya Scramble and they pay a buckload of money over there. I don't think it's always necessary. However, they're large enough to where it's kind of more of the look than it is what they need.
And I was looking at the audience. I think majority of the will probably be their first office. So if you have any questions that are general, that would probably apply to all people about getting an office, feel free to put them in the chat. And while you're thinking of that, I will go with Dwayne's second question. His is so his exact question was, do building prices vary if there are available services like, elevators, like larger elevators? And but I think the general question would be, so I think answering his specific question, but like what are some factors that change building prices that obvious other than like, it's a new building?
Well, I would definitely say there's amenities that can definitely impact in the style of building. And I wouldn't say it's exactly in the rent. Yes, rent will differ and change as more luxurious it is, things of that nature. You'll find what we call the management fees. You're paying a company to manage the building. Those largely change depending upon the amenities in the building. So if you were in, for example, a simple building with simple rooms, everyone's going to have an elevator. There's just laws of real estate. If you're over than larger than 4 stories, you can get to 5, but we won't get there. Above 4 stories, you're going to have an elevator for the most part anyways. Those kind of simple stuff aren't going to make a huge factor. However, let's just say the simple offices have, you have your own toilet and your own sink in your room. Thus, there's not a lot of public use areas. Thus, there's not as many janitorial needs. People aren't cleaning anymore. Cheaper fees. Now, if you're in a large corporate building where there's public bathrooms everywhere, vending machines, you got a management team there, janitors there 24/7, and maybe a security guard. These are what's just going to keep dragging your cost up. If I could simplify it that way. So the more amenities you have, there's city offices here that have gyms in them. That's really awesome, but you're going to pay for it. But you're better off going to a private gym, to be honest. But yes, the more luxurious your building is, the more the cost, I'll put it that way. But in terms of, if I were to compare the same style room with the same style ideas in the same buildings, no, they're not going to raise much more with simple things like an elevator.
And I'm curious too, like actually I'm curious, how does floor impact price?
Oh yeah. Oh well, all right. So now floor impacting price is also going to change by area. But you're going to find that the type of businesses reflect the type of flooring in some type of ways. So usually first floors are going to be a walk-in style type of office where you kind of have the class storefront. They have their own private entranceway there. And usually it's also reserved for simple restaurants. Usually, let's just say the whole building was uniform. That's important because usually the first floor is going to be smaller than the other floors in a lot of cases. However, let's just say the whole building was uniform. Your most expensive room is first floor. So most luxurious because it's going to get the most eye traffic, which is really important to business. Easiest access for clientele. And also, like you were saying about the elevator having an amenity to the building, handicap accessible is also an amenity to the building that can make it more attractive. Your first floor is going to be the most expensive by a lot. Second is going to be top floor. You go 2 ways. You're either the king of the building or you're the front of the building. You're the image of the building. Once you get through like those first 2, then they just start going up a couple thousand yen, maybe another $100 here, another $100 here. The more you're in the city, the more where there's potential views, the more you start paying to go upwards. If that makes sense.
And this is kind of random, but does basement impact anything? Like having your office in the
Oh,
basement, maybe.
that's a good one. Now, I will say yes, it impacts some because basement's just not as great as everything else. However, depending on your area, like in Zabajuban, I worked with a restaurant and their first area was a B1. It was barely differential in price compared to the first floor restaurant, surprisingly, is because it still just has instant access where someone doesn't have to consistently go into an elevator or wait for people to get up or, kind of make their way upstairs. B1, depending on how it's set up, really kind of still give you instant access and really still gives that face image of the building compared to the higher floors. Because a lot of buildings also, a small point is they won't allow advertisements on windows or things of these natures, or you can't put out a kaban or a sign. My building's one of those. I can't put advertisements on the window. I'm on the top floor. I also can't put a sign outside. That can impact a lot of certain business. B1 still gets that access to the front door. They still get the signage. And that's where B1 has a great advantage of looking like it might be worse, but it's not as bad.
No, that is an excellent point. Yeah, or at least
So
for
I,
physical businesses, that let's say having your signage, it's a huge difference.
and usually it only gets given to that first and B1. Other than that, you may get a little spot on the side of the building when you walk into where it's like first floor, second floor, and then you get to kind of put your name there. But it's all about, depending on the type of your business, is this ease of access, easy to find. All those experiences really impact your business. I found even when I was finding my own offices moving along was every time it's changed to be easier for the client to get there. And that's definitely one, and also easy to find. Just being able to see the name up there is really big, especially in my type of business where customer acquisition can be quite costly.
Yeah, same here. And Joe asks, are there any restrictions or special requirements or additional fees costs for foreign-owned companies? It's like
Normally, let's this is supposed to be a fair market and everybody should pay the same. Should be a clean answer. However, there are times where you can get taken advantage of. Thus, having a great agent is very important. There's a great story that I remember learning, and it had to do when Disney was built up in California and they were wanting to go to Florida and they wanted to acquire land in Florida. The minute the Disney name would be found out, they would get charged 100 times over. Thus, they had other people procure the land for them at price. However, halfway through of getting the land, it was giving out the information that Walt Disney was the one actually purchasing this land. Thus, it did go up in over 100 times in value. So let's just say you were a large tech firm as of Bitcoin, and they knew you were coming to the Japanese market. Be careful. There's going to be a lot of companies targeting you, and they're going to try and pull more and more money out of you. You'll secretly find that key money to go up faster than you ever believe. However, in a typical sense, I'm going to say no. There is a chance they may take an extra deposit. That happens in regular Chintai and rentals, and it also happens in apartments. It's going to have to do with the background of your company. So let's just say you're a startup with not much capital. You went with a bare minimum. As a management company, they may look at you and go, we're not sure about this guy. He's not developed in Japan really yet. You may not even have a company tohon yet. If they think it's a little bit more weary and there's a little bit more risk, there's a possible chance they would take extra deposits. Outside of that, there should not be any more extra charges. It's a fair market.
No,
Hopefully.
that was a good point. I think also when we had with the English schools in the beginning, we had a hard time finding places, and the main reason was the capital amount in the bank account. But
It's because Japan, this is very important for people who haven't been in Japan. I think a lot of people have worked in Japan have been in, and it's not a knock on Japan or anybody in the country. Japan's a simple country. They like to look at things simply as possible. So they just look at your company tone. You could have 10 locations and have amazing schools and be raking in a bunch of dollars. They really just want to look at your company tone, the standard basics, what's the capital in it, and then they'll go into your accounting. When you try to give them irregulars, Japan is not a great country for those type of flexibilities. You could explain your business and how amazing your concept is to the end of earth, and it could be the most amazing Shark Tank story. They still won't go for it without looking at documents and having the right numbers for them, sadly.
And cool. So I think we're good to go for that. And so I guess next, moving out of a building.
This one can vary, but simply I'll narrow it in two areas. One is going to be leave it the way you found it. That's important for all regular apartment rentals, house rentals, office rentals. If your office came already equipped with the carpet, the wallpaper, the aircon, those kind of all the simple necessities, wear and tear is always going to happen no matter where you go. But you want to leave it as close as possible to the quality you got it when you leave. So if you were to have tables in there, get everything empty. If you rented it empty, get it back to empty. It's going to be really important because they're going to start docking you in their cleaning. You're going to find that the legal limits in cleaning are very crazy here because usually you would think it's max to the deposit. I've been charged like 2 months worth of cleaning, depending on what they have to do. Full wallpaper change and stuff like that. So be careful. Second is if it was a skeleton, which means you did the construction yourself. 2 routes are going to be here. One is the rule of thumb is you have to return it to the original state. If it was skeleton when you got it, you got to pay the construction twice. Now it's nowhere as much as it cost you the first time, but they have to bring it all the way back down to the bare bones concrete walls. That could be costly, so be careful there. It's really good to be upfront with the management company in the beginning when you do your construction, because if you were to do the construction and it's quite neutral and quite nice and it was left quite nice, I've gotten away out of 2 of my offices by not having to pay any changes afterwards because I rented it better than it would have been skeleton. That would have cost the client a lot more money afterwards to rent it. So in that case, you can negotiate. If it was a really nice construction that you did in renovation, usually you can try and negotiate that with the management company because it's easier to rent for them. But it's not always the case in certain types of business, so do be careful. If you do the renovation, usually you have to return it back to 0. Other than that, usually it's going to be cleaning costs. Negotiating those are very important. If they've taken multiple months of deposit, do be careful and negotiate. I've gotten back all my months of deposit, and I've also gotten back out of 10 months, I got back half. It was not fun. It wasn't easy to negotiate, but be careful there. The biggest rule I've ever made for clients, and especially expats that don't know how it goes about, when you do a walkthrough, which you're going to do even in offices, when you sign that document of the cost, you're binded. Be careful there. Your chance of negotiation is before signing. The minute you sign, you have no skin in the game for negotiation. So please be careful. If you ever think you're being a little bit pushed or a little bit cheated, always contact the brokerage you worked with originally and kind of ask for support. And if you just think it's unfair at the end of the day, tell them you will not sign and just continue on with that stance. Because the minute you sign, you're stuck. So please be careful. How was that?
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions regarding moving out of an office building?
I guess if I could give a last point too, how many months do you have to give upon leaving is important as well. Understand your contract in the beginning. A lot of times it's usually 1 month. If you stayed longer than a year, sometimes it could be no months. It depends how much deposit you put in there. For offices, for the most part, I'll tell you, we never really had exit clause in terms of months because I've always stayed longer than a year and I've also had a lot more money into the place. However, if you go for the simple Soho offices or the simple just kind of apartment style small places, those ones are usually going to have simpler and similar rental terms to apartments. So it's usually giving a 1 or 2 month notice. That can also cost you money. So do be prepared for that and try and get the timing of exit to be as close as accurate as possible.
Sure. My experience has always been like 6 months usually.
Yeah. Bigger offices. If you're in a nice corporate building and in a bigger office, a lot of those will have a much longer. I've been in kind of more simpler, smaller offices myself, even the storefront. I've got really lucky with management companies. I'll tell you, it changes by management company, and understanding them when you work with them is going to be important too. I saw a question.
Sorry about that. I was on
Yeah.
mute. The question is, why would some buildings want to go back to skeleton? Or so I guess why would the owners want it to be in that state?
It's a good point, and it goes in two different directions as well. As if I was the management company or the owner, it's understanding what was done to that office. I'm going to say this is usually more pertained closer to, let's just say, first story offices are probably the most skeleton seen offices. The reason is let's just say a restaurant came in, you allowed a small bar or restaurant to come be on the first floor of your building, and they've renovated to the case, they have a nice bar. It may not be easy to use, for one, for another company. Two, it may not be the style that they'd want. I've seen restaurants, owners that want to get a restaurant. We found great locations and great spaces, but it was like kind of like a nightclub style bar, right? It was impossible for them to use. Thus, the management company would have had to pay to skeletonize that afterwards, and they don't want to spend money. So thus, if it's going to save them money, they don't want to take the burden. The minute they allow you out of your contract without doing it, then they're responsible for it. So they'd rather you pay for it and get it done. And second, it's going to have to be with just being able to rent it. Is it easier to rent it as it is with the work you've done to it? Or is it easier to rent it from a clean slate? So I've gotten out of every one of my offices without having to make it back into a skeleton, just due to I've been pretty neutral with the way we've set up the rooms. However, I've personally worked in and worked with a couple restaurants where they've had to go back to clean slate at the end, and it's quite costly. So do be careful of that.
Gotcha. So is that something you could talk in the beginning before you sign the contract? Let's say in the office case.
I'd say yes, but no. It's really going to be at the end of the day of what the management really thinks of what's, you know, how they're going to feel at that time and what the market looks like.
And neutral would mean like at least in the office. I think Dwayne's probably asking for the office case. It's
So in the office case, I kept mine as just a simple office. I didn't build up a bunch of small room walls. I didn't choose like well, I chose like pretty nice wallpapers, but I didn't, for example, I didn't have wallpapers with my logo all over them. I didn't put stuff all in the walls to where like when I took it off, it really damaged the walls. That being more neutral to where I didn't really customize it. I didn't put logos up. I didn't put my own kind of decal stickers everywhere. Being neutral just means I just renewed the place. I put new nice wallpapers, kind of had a designer coordinate the colors. Thus, for the management company, it was much easier to rent afterwards, and they were quite happy with the state when I left.
gotcha. But if you kind of create like private offices, that increases the risk of, let's say, having to pay those to let's say skeleton costs. Returns.
Oh yeah, just because if you're going to build up multiple rooms, right? Not a lot of companies may not want multiple rooms, right? Some companies just want a large open floor space because they kind of do that sales team packed desks where they do the 2 and 2s and the 2 on the ends. In that case, you wouldn't want walls because it'll definitely take away from your square meterage. Japan is tight on space already, so.
And yeah. And I think I can probably, in my case, Dwayne, I think we've had I think we moved out of one, or we've moved out of several locations. I think but in our case, because it's a school, it was we did create private rooms, and we did have to pay those to return it to a skeleton cost, even though it was office, like let's say it's kind of, the school is kind of like an office, but so in our case, every case we've had to do it.
And I would definitely talk up front with your management company about it before you go into contract, because some companies, and it depends where your offices are. So you probably might have worked with nicer buildings personally than I have, or larger kind of bigger buildings for the schools. where I haven't necessarily needed them. But a lot of contracts up front will just say it has to be returned to skeletal. Like it's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's already written there. So you kind of know what you're getting into. And in those cases, do be prepared to you have to do that. So that also means when you're doing your construction, keep it simple, keep it light, easy to take down. The more stuff you add on, the more money it'll cost at the end.
Cool. And so, yeah, and I think, so just for everyone, I do think we're pretty good on time. So I think there will be some time to ask specific questions. But I think regarding moving out of a business, I guess, any last things to be cautious of?
Contract terms. And also, like I said, with the walkthrough, it's your final moment. Japan used to be run by the Yakuza, we'll put it that way. In terms of real estate, the Yakuza used to run real estate. Thus, the real estate laws and regulations have become very strict over times. However, like I spoke about before, it can still be very gray, right? In America, you can't take a cleaning fee that's more than the deposit in most cases. In Japan, that doesn't particularly work there. They can rack up those costs. So you just have to be careful. Now, there are fair costs and not fair costs. Just be careful. And I definitely recommend having more than one person with you there. If your Japanese skills are kind of lacking, definitely have someone who can speak Japanese and really be able to express your feelings about the issue. I've always been able to dock them down in cost. So be careful, understanding your contract terms upon exiting, and also that last walkthrough. Don't get stuck. I know so many expats in terms of not just offices and apartments where they'll do a walkthrough at the end, didn't really understand much. They just signed a piece of paper, and then at the end of the day, they're like, why am I paying this? Or what can I do to lower it? You can't. It's done. So be very careful.
Thank you. And just a quick ad, it's starting last week. Actually, my business, we're offering affordable websites, and we can create websites for people, and SEO and MEO. Although we just started, we're pretty much booked out for March and April. But if you want a website, probably like for later on in the year, we can probably take on someone for probably around June and July.
Man, I wish I had these things 6-7 years ago when I was working with Wix, trying to figure out how it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially because everyone in here is probably tech, so they might understand more than I did. But back then, I was just leaving university and just starting a real estate company. So,
all right, getting a conversion-based website that is for SEO MEO, and in my case, for my other companies, like they I'll say probably they get about 40,000 views a month just through SEO.
that's so great.
Mainly
Understanding that SEO is huge, and that was probably the hardest thing to learn. So I definitely recommend, if you guys don't know anything about making websites or the background of websites, definitely find an expert like Tyson, just because it really, especially my business. So like I said, I didn't need a storefront, and something I learned, it's because about 99% of my business comes from social media and online. And if it wasn't learning about the SEO and getting out to people, I probably wouldn't be here to this day. So definitely look for the experts, and we all know Tyson's one of them.
Doing it right is good. And for Google Maps, I would say I'm probably one of the best at that. And I've ranked probably over 30 words in Tokyo, Osaka, big cities. I got, English school in Shinjuku in Japanese. So it's Shibuya. So it's so I do know that. And the last one, just a quick one, it's the podcast sponsor, eJabble. So they are a job board for English speaking or bilingual tech jobs in Japan and Japanese speaking jobs in other countries. So, anyone who can speak Japanese but wants a job in the US, they're a good place to check out, or just tech jobs in Japan. And they also have a lot of good blogging content. Like there are article on where to sit in a meeting, in a Japanese meeting, when meeting like a business client, and
That's
other
big.
ones like culture.
Those are the little things people don't really understand. Those are big. Those little, especially with Japan, really understanding those innuendos, and where do you tap your glass when you're talking with the bigger boss? Yeah,
exactly. And let's say
smart to know.
And every little more that you show it for them, it de-risks doing business with you.
Well, and that's really important, as if, especially if you guys are going to want to create businesses in Japan as expats, working with other companies is really crucial to your business. Those things can make or break the deals. I've worked with larger companies, and those little things that I didn't think I was making a mistake, but afterwards my wife would tell me, like, you should have done this, or, should have gone about like this, could make or break a large deal. And so definitely do your research. Japan's huge with that. That Asian culture business is really important.
And there's some pretty good articles as well. And so I guess our last topic before we go into the Q&A is renegotiating terms. And
Yeah, this
and
one's there's not much. The good thing about offices compared to apartments, I'll say, is usually, now this does vary. I got lucky to where I haven't had to pay renewals on my office terms. A lot of contract terms are usually about 2 years. I've seen some 5 years in office rentals. Usually there'll be a renewal fee. Renew your contract every 2 years. The management company will take either a month's fee, half a month's fee, or a set amount of fee. And that's usually perpetual the whole time you're there. I've gotten very lucky to where I've worked kind of with smaller management companies that didn't really follow up on them. However, that one's kind of important. I think if the fee is quite small, I definitely think it's quite reasonable, and I don't think it hurts. Now try to save that money, but I understand them as a management company because I come from that perspective that they got to make a living, and if they have to put in an employee to recreate the contract again, to set up the documents, to send them back to the owner to get signed and deliver, there's a little bit of work there, and they deserve a little bit of money for the type of work they're doing. But something, if your rent is $2,000 or 200,000 yen and they want a month every 2 years, yeah, I would definitely come after them and be like, all right, I know you want 20 or 30,000 is pretty fair for you to send out the documents, but I'm not going to pay a large chunk. So in terms of renegotiation, your first one's going to be your renewal fees. If those are perpetual, and in those renewal fees, there could be your guarantors renewed as well. There may be a fee there. So just pay attention to your contract, know the fees that are perpetual, and find out if those can be renegotiated. Second would be in terms of rent. Yes and no. Like I said, Japan's a very straightforward company, and they're not very negotiable in a lot of things, sadly, except for appliances. Different story, but it doesn't hurt to ask. It's been my largest issue I've ever had in Japan, and from expats, they've always given me this same comment when they work with Japanese agencies. Is I've asked them about this, and they're like, "Oh no, I can't ask that, or it's just not normal." It doesn't hurt. The worst they can say is no. If you can renegotiate your office, and it's in their best interest to renegotiate with you, it's going to cost them money in advertisements, the whole works. Try it. Now, start with the price you think is fair. Try and knock off 50 to $100 every time and go for it. Outside of that, man, this is a tough one, but it's case to case, depending on how large your company is and how small company it is. If your rent was 5 million yen a month versus if your rent was $500. But either way, whether it's small or large, just ask. If you can save a buck, save a buck. If you can't, just continue on with your business life and go towards success.
great advice.
Yeah, it's just that there's not much room there, right? It's really just those renewal fees that come.
Cool. So it's yes, I think we can do some Q&A time. Does anyone have any questions? And I'll give people some time to type in the questions. And as you do that, I'll let maybe Corey can talk a little bit about a jumpstart abroad as well. You can just tell me what
if you don't mind.
slide. Yeah.
Well, Jumpstart Abroad, the original goal. Now I kind of regret the name. It was a college project back then. I should have gone with something like JSA Real Estate, and then let Jumpstart Abroad be something else. And we are rebranding currently. However, Jumpstart Abroad, the whole point was to kind of just get that simple jumpstart to head start. The things that most of my clients are new expats, and of course expats that are here, but a large majority are expats coming into the country. So we wanted to create a system to kind of make life easier. Real estate is one of the worst experiences for expats coming to Japan for the first time, not understanding the fees. Japan is still not a country that's foreign friendly in terms of rentals. I would say 6 out of 10 are usually not foreign friendly. and 2 out of those 4 are if you speak Japanese. So creating a nexus to be a management company that really represents mainly only expats allowed me to kind of get familiar with other companies and kind of allow an easier access to apartments, mansions, housing, and to get through.
And
Now,
Pete, could you put in the link for Corey's for Jumpstart Abroad? And also if you could put this information in the chat as well.
definitely appreciate
Yep,
it.
sure.
And also, if people have questions, I'm not sure if it's okay with Tyson review, but I'm pretty open to other real estate questions too. If people just have a general question, want to ask something, please feel free about it. Cool. But yeah, and then we've also created a relocation system. This one's kind of more specific. So our company has been trying to create solve an issue with student housing in Japan. International students have a pretty large housing crisis in terms of affordability and simpler. So we've kind of, instead of just the investment projects there, we've created a relocation system for corporates and students to kind of take care of those simple issues when entering the country. You got to get a cell phone, you got to get a bank, you have to register at the government offices. If you're a sole proprietor, you have to be able to get your own insurances. We've kind of created programs to kind of ease all that up and get it done for you so you have no issues or messing up in the system. And thank you for that, Pete.
And Joe asks, and also just I'll leave that as the screenshot so like anyone watching the video can see it very clearly. But
Appreciate it.
Joe has a good question. And which areas or neighborhoods in Tokyo do you recommend for foreign-owned tech companies?
It's a good question. Now, I think there's going to be 2 routes here. One is going to be the size of your company. It's going to make a big difference. And also knowing who your competition is. And I guess a third one could also be your clientele. I think ease of access is going to be a very important one. So I'm definitely going to recommend probably number 1 is Minatoku. Now, I could be wrong here. I haven't worked with a lot of tech companies. However, a lot of the clientels and rentals of tech companies I've worked with have either been in Minatoku, which is going to be your Roppongi, your Azabu Juban. Hiro is a little bit more residential, but if you're looking for a small style office, that area could be great. But large city-wise, I definitely think Roppongi is going to be great. I work with a couple of tech companies in Meguro. I think it's a little bit more of a quieter, easier area to have a tech company. And then lastly, definitely Shibuya. I think Shibuya has probably had the largest access of tech companies that we've worked with. But that usually comes with kind of I want to say a higher budget and definitely kind of more impact. The foreign and Japanese rental market's a little bit different. Japanese people are kind of about status. So you're going to see a lot of Japanese companies want to be somewhere like in Ginza, right? An expensive office in a glorious location. Whereas in expats is a little bit about more affordability and impact. If you're kind of got more money in a larger company and you think that your image is very important, I would locate the larger cities of Roppongi, Shibuya, potentially Meguro, or going towards that Ginzo. Tokyo Station area is a really nice access point.
Thank you for that. And the next question is from Yuka. And Yuka, I might need you to, I'm not sure if I get the question exactly, so I might need to clarify. But if you have found a place to rent.
I think I understand it.
Oh, okay.
But I think what she's asking is like, let's just say you found an office that you really like. How long does it take for you to get renovation in there and to finish so that you can start using it?
Gotcha.
Gonna predict.
It's me, Yuka. I don't know if you can hear
Yuka.
me.
Yes.
Okay. It's actually more like before you can start renovating. Like how long does the process or the procedure, how long does it take with the real estate agent?
Now, would you say with the real estate company or with your own renovation company? Now, say the
Real
management
estate company.
So the management company are very specific in most cases. They usually won't, you get access upon getting the contract, your start date. That's where that free rent negotiating is really important. They usually won't allow you access in before your start date. just due to you could back out of the contract and damage what they already have there. Does that answer your question away? So let's just say you found a place you really liked. You've set up your contract for 2 weeks later. You'll come up with a start date where you start your payments and you pay your initial costs. Now that may be a little bit different. There are some management companies, and the larger scale of business you are and the larger office they are, they may allow you some little leeway. But for the most part in the real business, even in terms of purchasing and renting, it's from the start date of your contract that you've paid for.
Does anyone? Okay.
You're welcome.
Oh, cool. It seems like you. We do have another question from Dwayne. Actually, Corey, are you able to read this one?
Yeah, I'm reading it right now for R&D development hardware development. No, that's definitely, don't worry about that. No, that's a really good question.
That's a good question.
I can't share what company they are. However, there's some companies with, for example, I don't know if this would fall in your R&D, but let's just say they have cloud warehouses where they manage clouds, stuff of those natures, and those usually kind of hide out in similar areas just so they can fit in. And they usually target very specific areas. Warehouses is going to be a tough one for you. The amount of space and land that's necessary for you to be able to achieve, and also for a price, which is the biggest market, it's going to lead you in multiple directions, but it's going to be a bit out of Tokyo. You find a lot of warehouse style type businesses start going north towards Ibaraki and Saitama direction. Now there's probably a little bit better areas like Misato and stuff that are just easier for living and easier access, or you'll end up in that Chiba direction. I've worked with a couple breweries that needed large spaces. They all ended up in that Chiba direction. Because if you kind of go down that Chuo Sobu line, it brings you quite far out past the Tachikawa all the way to the west and to Chiba to the east. It can get quite cheap and you can get better land out in that area. And also they have warehouse style places, but it also gives you really nice ease into Tokyo where you may not be able to have access for. If you go to Ibaraki, it's not as easy to get out. And I think a second important part would be, what do you need in terms, like I know you said a highway, do you need access to water? Right, where's the ports? I think a really important part was if you needed access to ports for deliveries and that nature, you'll find yourself in a higher budget range towards the Haneda, Tokyo Riverside, or you'll probably find yourself a bit up north, not even close towards Tokyo. I can't tell you the exact port name, but I know the people in Ibaraki tend to use that. I think Far East Chiba side access port and also the Tokyo access port. Does that answer the question? I hope so. If he wants to ask a more specific area into that, I could probably get more into it. But if it's a hard question, I just don't know what you need in terms for your business, that will definitely change your location.
And go, Dwayne, we don't have another question, so okay.
Oh yeah, feel free. I always do these kind of video chats. Feel free to reach out to me and we can sit down and talk and I can play around with you.
Does anyone else have a question for Corey?
Yeah, it's a tough one because offices, they're not overly complicated. You know, offices are pretty upfront. You know, costs may just kind of differ by what you look for, but I think for most of these clients and the type of office they need, it's not really overly complicated. Whereas in a school and stuff like that may have a whole different kind of, a lot more questions asked and how to do it.
Yeah, when you do it 10 times, let's say you have a checklist already ready to go.
Oh yeah. I just recommend people try to save money and just know what you need. I was able to find a wonderful office in a new location, and there's great deals out there because you'd be surprised what office I got for the price I got and where I am nowadays. Feel free to come out and take a look. But yeah, working with your agent and being close with an agent, if you are kind of third party, I would say Japanese people that work with like sumo and things of that nature, they're going to have a little bit harder trouble because they're just kind of looking to see what may be out there in the public market. If you can work closely with the agent, get to know your agent and let them kind of get to know you and what you're looking for and really kind of work with them. I always invite clients to come by my office. It's kind of the unorthodox route, but instead of just interacting online and I just send you an option here or there, come into my office. I'll flip the screen around, which most companies won't allow you to see it. And this way you can see it as I can. And then we can play around together. Let's go into there and change up the options and play with the budget and the sizes to be able to kind of get what you can do. And the only way you can do that is really working with your agent. So I definitely recommend find someone you trust and that you think has the best interest for you, and just stick with them. They'll definitely get you what you need.
I'll end it with a final question. And so yeah, I think the topic of agent is another good angle. But any other tips for, like, I would say finding the right agent? So let's say it's on the list, or this is going to be on YouTube, probably several hundred people will see it. They might not be in Tokyo, but what are some other aspects of a good agent or tips for finding a good agent?
I would say, not to hate on anyone, be careful with large companies in the aspect of, I know they may be large and have a nice reputation. Sometimes they'll have a really great arsenal of places. However, the kind of connection you'll get with an agent from there is it's very business to business kind of feeling. And there's not a lot of talk of personal feeling or really trying to understand you. They're there to make a sale. I've managed to keep my business to the size it is for that specific purpose of, I like working directly with my clients. I like being able to make time for them and giving them the opportunity. And I kind of represent them. I'll fight for costs. Really kind of to get to know your agent and thinking that he may be able to understand you and really see what you want is going to be a lot more important than going to the box stores. And usually you can save a lot more money by working with a smaller real estate company. Not just to boost my own business, but there is a few other agents in Tokyo. Won't name them for business sakes, but they are really great agents. Definitely take a look, reach out, talk with them. The one thing I would say to be careful of most, and I'll say this pertaining to only Japan, because I can't claim this in any other countries. I won't specify a race either. There are a lot of agents here that are working under something I'll call it similar to a pyramid scheme. It's a very gray area, but the way they're doing it, I guess, isn't illegal. What happens is, as an agent working for a company in Japan, we do not require a license to be an agent in real estate. So for example, my wife has a real estate license. The company has a real estate license. Her license is good up to for 5 employees. I'm one of them. I don't have an actual personal license myself in Japan. I'm just familiar with real estate and I work as a staff. And you'll notice that for all real estate companies you go to, most of those aren't actually license holders. It's very hard to get one here. These companies, and it's usually the ones that target expats. Oh, sorry, did you want to cut in?
No, I just thought that was fascinating, interesting.
That's an interesting one too. There's a lot of rules here. And so like when you walk into like a storefront real estate company, like a Japanese one, and you got the people at the desk, most of those aren't what we would call takenshi or like the actual holder of a license. They couldn't actually read a contract. They're just salesmen. When you go to do your contract, you'll have someone come from the back. They actually have the license. They have to present to you. There's certain rules, things of that nature. So be careful there, even in those cases, because those are the disposable people they want to call them. And they're really just salesmen. That's where you don't really get that kind of feeling of love and, really want to work together and find the best place. Those guys got to hit a quota. But back to my point of the ones that are targeting expats, there will be an employee that works for a certain company, let's just say like me, that doesn't have a license. And what they're doing is they're reaching out to other people and they're saying, you advertise on Facebook and everything and get the client. And if you bring them back to me, I'll give you a cut out of my commission, whatever I'm getting from my company. The problem with this avenue is you think you're working with John Smith. And when you go to rent an apartment and you have an issue, John Smith is no longer around. And even if he's around, there's nothing he can do for you because the actual company that rented the apartment for you has no idea of John Smith. It's a big issue currently right now in the rental market. You can see it at advertisements in Gaijin Pot. It's a big one. I'm not going to throw out names, but real estate Japan, anything that's written all in English and just says real estate and, you know, all this stuff, just be careful with those. Definitely get to know your agent, ask for a specific business card. Every person should have a real estate license number that represents their company. And kind of I recommend always going by the office at least once, right? Get that feeling, because you have to just be careful. I won't say other countries, I'm not sure if they are, but I just know that I run kind of the community of real estate here in Japan for expats in the Tokyo Expat Network, and a lot of the complaints kind of come upwards, and I hear about it. It's one of the most common.
No, that was really interesting. Thank you for
That
sharing
that one's kind of just out there and unrelated in a way.
Yes.
But in terms of an agent, find one that really understands you, and also just make sure they're really an agent at a real estate company. That one's happened a lot. It's funny. You wouldn't believe it, but I get that a lot.
Cool. Yes, and yes, I think that's it for today. If anyone, our one is I thought the information was very useful, so I'd like to give you a big thank you from my end.
No, I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions or anything, that if it's simple stuff that are unrelated and you're coming to Japan first time, just shoot me a message. I've gone through the processes with so many people, and even myself personally coming as a student. If it has to do with coming to Japan and adapting and changing what I should do or what's your thoughts, I'll feel free to ask. I'm sure I could give the advice.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dwayne. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Joe. And everyone that asked questions as well. It was a wonderful time.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll probably do the next seminar in probably maybe April, maybe May, and maybe how to do social media in Japan.
That's a good
Japanese people. Yeah.
To Japanese people, that's an even better one. That's a good one. I'll definitely be there.